Well, hey, welcome to United Opposition with Scott and Marshall. Today we're talking about healthcare and murder. It's going to be a big one. Here we go. Welcome to United Opposition with Scott and Marshall, where two people on opposing sides of topics come together and have a civil discussion when in fact we don't cancel each other. That's what we talked about last week. If you want to check out last week's, when is it time to cut somebody off? And you had your scissors, I had my samurai sword. It's still in the studio, by the way. It's now part of my permanent decoration behind me. I've got my samurai sword. I don't know if you have your scissors or not. You put your scissors away. You're no longer a warrior. You put your scissors away. You've turned to a life of peace. Yeah, I've got to put my weapon on display. Is what goes on there. That's probably not a very good thing. But yes, we're going to be talking a little bit about what happened this week with United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson and the nameless shooter. I don't wish to mention their name, but maybe we. I mentioned one. Maybe I should mention the other. I don't know. We're gonna find out what's what led to this. We're gonna have a little bit of discussion on this whole thing. I've seen you say a couple of things online, Marshall. I saw you had to correct something from a misquote from Elon Musk. We never know. I mean, we really got to. Man, there's so much, especially with AI coming out. It's going to be so difficult to find out what we can actually quote and what we can't. And that'll be a whole nother show. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, Freedom 2O Water, freedom20.com. Get your water there. I was reading up on it, and they're expanding. They're going to be, if you go to their website, there's a lot of things that they're talking about. They're going to be having flavor packs come out that you can pour in there. I love flavor packs in my water. I love putting those in there, getting some flavor, get some energy. I was reading up on them. They're triple filtered, right? They do like reverse osmosis and something. There's like three things. I know at my house we have like the water softener, then we have like the reverse osmosis, and then and then it runs through the refrigerator and it's got its own filter. What's even more than that? So freedom20, freedom20.com and Freedom 2O Water. Thank you for sponsoring us, 511 Media. I'm going to take my sip of freedom.
And he earned flavor apparently this time.
Yes, earned flavor. That's pulling from Andor right there.
Yeah.
Season 2 is coming out pretty well. Is it pretty soon or is it like 2 years? I can't remember.
No, it's coming up in like a couple months or something. It's coming out soon. I think like in April or something. I'm excited. Yeah,
it's some of the best Star Wars content ever. I put, when it came out, I put out a post. That picture, that meme that shows Steven Crowder sitting at a table and holding his cup of coffee, and then there's like a sign and it says something changed my mind. I put on there, said, and Andor is the best Star Wars content that's come out since 1981. Changed my mind.
There we go. Well, let's zero in though on this one.
Zeroing in. You brought up the topic. I'm like, let's talk about that. What did you? I want to let you lead out on this and see where we can find common ground and see where we diverge.
Oh gosh. Well, what's the question? I mean, we all kind of know what's happened. This guy has become something of a folk hero. He's not the first. You go back, you look at Jesse James, the outlaw.
Everybody doesn't know. Just tell them what happened. The very basic, the event we're talking about.
Oh,
okay. If people aren't familiar.
So yeah, there's this young guy, Ivy League graduate, who has beef with healthcare CEOs apparently, and the healthcare insurance industry, and on his own devised a plot to basically ambush and assassinate a CEO. And he was successful in doing so. And then he gets picked up at a McDonald's 5 days later. He might have almost got away with it because if not for the photos, I don't think they really had a hard time tracking him down. And they even lied to the press, or the officials lied. They said like, oh, we have a name and so on. They didn't have his name.
They didn't have nothing.
They were fishing, they were hunting, trying to scare him. But they did track him down, and apparently he was called in. I've heard two different versions of the story, but one is that an elderly customer recognized him, which was probably true. But that the tip to the police was phoned in by a McDonald's employee. And so there you go. The left is absolutely excited. The left is thrilled. The left generally thinks this is
he killed somebody?
Or that was caught? No, that he killed someone.
Okay.
Even though apparently he belongs to the right based on his social media commentary or whatever, but I think that's irrelevant either way.
Mhm.
What he did was something, however, that's very consistent with leftist praxis, if you will,
Yeah.
which is to take hostile, aggressive, direct action. There are people who will argue that it's a form of self-defense, because there is a thing called, there's structural violence, and there's a particular term for this here, social murder.
Mhm.
And that's what happens.
If you want to change definitions, sure.
Well, no. Social murder is a term that was coined by Ingalls. So I don't think the definition of that phrase is what Ingalls said it was. And it's essentially when you have a group of individuals who have power, who by their action or their inaction can bring about or hasten the demise of other persons,
Mhm.
and they exercise that power. Well, that's social murder. And the thing is that's one of the greatest evils of all time. Great evils like the Holocaust. Yes, there was a guy who dumped the Zyklon B into the gas chambers, but there was a whole host of people, millions of people, who in a way were complicit in social murder because they allowed this to happen or they facilitated this on some level.
Mhm.
And it is a very, very sticky moral issue, because I think you and I are going to agree that murder is wrong, right?
Yes. Yes.
All murder is wrong. If you commit murder, there needs to be a consequence. You need to be punished for it.
Based on the definition of murder, that is a premeditated intent to kill someone, not as a side effect. It's not murder if it's a side effect. It's not murder if it's unintentional. There has to be the direct intention to kill someone. That's the difference. That's why it's called murder, is because there is the direct intention to kill somebody.
But there are different
manslaughter.
ways.
There's all kinds of other different ways.
Forms of murder.
There's different and there's also different forms of death. Not all death is murder.
Correct.
But murder requires an intent to kill.
Correct. So when a corporation says we can pay, one of the automakers did this, $10 to replace a part on a vehicle. And if we pay this $10 to replace the part on a whole fleet of vehicles, it's going to cost us this many millions of dollars. But if we simply don't do it, there will be this many accidents and deaths, but what we would have to pay out will be less than the price to replace all of these faulty parts. What do you make of that? How would you resolve that? Would you say, okay, that's fair, that's just how the game is played, or
then each individual case, each individual case gets to be brought up and shown that there was negligence, which is not murder, negligent manslaughter, and it can be, and they try that for that. Maybe even bring cases together for a large what's it called, when they all come together. Why can't I think of the word?
Class action
lawsuit. Because the difference is this part may or may not fail. They've made millions of them and 10 of them have failed. Does that mean everybody is going to die? No. Do we know who is going to die? No. And when they come and bring it to court, then we'll settle it at that point. The justice will be brought on an individual basis. And if there's negligence in that, then it'll be brought at that point. But that's different than, you know what? That person is driving that car and I'm going to make that part fail so that person dies. That's murder.
Sure. And I would agree with you that there's a difference there. But
there's still, I mean, and if you can bring up and show that there was negligence and it was a negligent death, then win the lawsuit.
So
but it has to be brought as an individual.
Right. So let's talk about United Healthcare that used an AI that declined 90% valid claims. They are the king of denying claims. And this has caused monumental suffering and an incalculable number of deaths. We're 100% certain, there's no question. And they knew that this policy of denying claims and delaying payment on claims and stuff, would cause people to delay care, would deny people care, would result in massive human suffering, and ultimately many, many deaths, thousands of deaths. And the entire point of that was the bottom line.
Mhm.
Isn't that avarice? Isn't that one of the 7 deadly sins? Should there not be some justice for that? Should those
I think
people
there
not
should
be
be
held to
justice.
account?
I think there
Okay.
should be justice. I just don't know that we can term it murder.
You call it whatever
Like
you
it's-
want. You can
Yeah,
call
but
it,
there should be that
call it
we should get
insurance
justice for
company
that.
policy. You can call it whatever you want. I don't care.
There
But you
should be.
agree
We should
that there
carry
should
out
be
things.
justice,
There
right?
should be justice for that,
Right.
and that should
Okay.
be carried out through the court system. And if there is
Mhm.
if there is a negligence there, and if there is a responsibility there, then there needs to be accountability there. I
Now,
don't want to take. I don't want to toy with the concept of calling something murder that's not murder.
We call it whatever you want.
Okay.
You call it social murder is what Ingalls would have called it, and it definitely meets the definition. You can call it whatever you like. I will let you call it. You can call it puppies and kittens for all you want. I don't care what you call it. The effect is the same. But here's the problem.
And I got to
agree
come
with
against.
you.
I have to come against that. You use that all the time, saying the effect is the same. But our society, it makes a difference on intent. Intent does make a difference. It's not just the end.
Well,
Just saying, well,
how
somebody
would
still
you
died.
characterize the intent to deny and delay claims, knowing that it causes mass human suffering and even death? How do you characterize that?
I characterize that as a very flawed, immoral person. I characterize that as
Okay.
something that needs to be stopped.
Mhm.
But they are not singling out, I want that person dead and I'm going to murder them. It's
Okay,
not
now
that.
that is a really
Definitely.
long name that you just gave me. Can we condense that down to a short phrase or a word?
That doesn't contain the word murder? Sure.
Sure. I want
Okay.
you to just give me the phrase so I can use it, because you have an issue if I say social murder because the word murder's in there. And I don't want that to be where we hang up, because that's not the issue here. I think we agree that that's evil, it's bad. There needs to be a
Yeah.
consequence. So
Yes.
you can give me a phrase and I'll use it, or we'll just move on.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, now, here's the problem. The problem is, I agree with you that, yes, we should use the justice system to effect justice. But
Mhm.
what happens when the justice system does not work, or works so slowly that these people are functionally getting away with it?
Abolish all lawyers.
Okay, Shakespeare. Kill the lawyers. All
I just
right.
I want the justice system to work so much faster, but at the same time,
Sure, I do too.
at the same time, if I was on the other end of it and I actually was innocent, wouldn't I want it to work slower?
Okay, but no, I don't know if I'm innocent. I would want it. I want that case heard right away. I think we all have an interest in speedy justice.
Yes,
The founding
not
fathers
not
recognized
not
that.
not what's the word I'm looking for? Not expedited justice though. Like
Not summary execution by a vigilante or even a court. I mean, we don't want summary execution. We want people to have a hearing. We want things to
there's
be
a ridiculousness
fair,
and there is a ridiculousness in our current justice system that frustrates me, and how long it takes to get to justice.
Correct.
But I recognize that the slowness of that process is based on the idea of giving the innocent every chance to show that they're to be innocent, making
Okay,
sure
but
that we're not wrongly sending something. It's just I feel that too many guilty people play that innocent card for that reason.
well,
And
they
slows everything
like
down
when
and
people
justice doesn't come.
delay, they have their cases delayed. They're walking free among us. They're
Mhm.
guilty of sin, but they're having cases delayed, so that they can do whatever it is they want to do, or run for president, for example. But there you have it. So, what should the people do if justice is perpetually delayed or deferred? What if they can't get justice from the courts? What if the courts or the political system, which is the other remedy, is so fundamentally flawed that the people are going to continue to suffer, their condition is going to continue to decline over time
Mhm.
because the system is so flawed. At what point do people say, you know what, the system is trash? We have a right to change it, and we're going to change it, and we can't change it from within.
I think maybe you vote for somebody who says they're going to make changes, and you put them in power.
Really?
We're about to find out.
Yeah, well, I think we are the
We're
hard
about to
way.
find out.
But ultimately, I think we'll be disappointed. But I'm okay. We'll give you your shot here. But at the end of the day, if that fails,
Mhm.
if because the left cannot access the political system at all. Democrats, who everybody labels as socialists and communists, are absolutely neither. And real socialists, real communists cannot. There are no such parties
Mhm.
that exist as anything but a joke in
Thankfully.
America. Okay. So what do we do? At what point is it okay for people to insurrect, for example? At what point was the American Revolution against King George justified?
Mhm. Well, you take that into account, and I think it comes down to who is the fight against. Are you
Okay.
fighting? Are you fighting the official authority, or are
Well,
you fighting individuals?
Well, you're going to be fighting the official authority, but the official authority is made of individuals.
Well, I mean, but these are, again, the official authority is made up of individuals who have agreed to be part of the authority.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you carry out combat against a soldier, that's different than carrying out combat against a civilian. And if you're
Sure.
going to be targeting civilians, then your insurrection is immoral.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Okay,
Unless the civilians are part of the apparatus, right?
but they're not.
Because not
That's
everybody
what I'm
who's
saying.
part of the apparatus of power is military. The apparatus of power is not simply
But that's what you have to
military.
fight. You have to fight the military. That's
So
who
only if you
that's who the
ambush
soldier is.
soldiers and shoot soldiers, only then is
If
it
you
okay.
engage in combat
King
with
George's
combatants.
King George's governors, King George's tax collectors, King George's, otherwise the enforcers are, because they're not under arms, you cannot attack
You-
them, you can't fight them. If
I
they're
would say-
running
I
a
would say-
convoy of supplies for
I would
King
say if they're
George's
not
army, you
under,
can't attack the
I would say
convoy.
if they're not carrying arms, no, you're not attacking
Oh
them.
wow. Well,
Soldiers carry arms.
I wish it worked that way, huh?
Shouldn't that be the way combat works? You carry on combat against armed people?
No,
Even if a soldier is
purpose,
unarmed, are you allowed to kill them?
yes, you are. The purpose of combat is this is according to Clausewitz, okay?
Mhm.
The purpose of combat is to destroy the enemy will to resist.
Mhm.
And to that end, then there's a lot of things that you can do. I think morally we agree that innocent people should not be targeted, but there are people who are guilty, who are not under arms, but they're quite guilty. Throwing down your rifle doesn't make you innocent after you've been using it. But and I also think that the stroke of a pen or a few keystrokes on a keyboard
but
can be just as deadly or even more lethal than a weapon.
No. Because on the battlefield, if a soldier throws down their arm and surrender, you're not supposed to kill them.
Well,
are you supposed to? Is that morally all right if they throw down their weapon?
Generally not. No.
Okay,
you're not
we agree.
supposed to. You're supposed to accept the surrender theoretically
Yes.
under conventions of war.
Yep.
But the reality is different. But what about the
I understand,
person who kills
that's what I'm saying.
at the stroke of a pin? What about that person who kills with the stroke
You
of a pin?
bring them to justice.
How? How do you bring them to justice if the system doesn't work?
You
or if they are hiding behind a row of soldiers, what do you do?
You fight the defenders until you get to them.
So
you fight the defenders,
basically, you're going to impose all
because
these
these are the
rules.
people. These are the people who aren't going to arm themselves and put themselves on the front line anyway. Once you get past the front line, they're not going to resist you. Then you arrest them. Then you bring them in, and then you try them. You bring them to
here's
justice.
the problem that I see with this whole thing.
Yeah.
You're putting a lot of rules on the people, and the people have a right for justice. They're entitled to justice. I mean, that's the entire reason why you form a government, is for protection from enemies. and to seek justice, to provide justice.
the-
but when
the
that
an- the
system
answer-
no longer works,
Right.
do
The
not
answer
the people
is
have the right to reconstitute that system?
yes. And the answer is to do that as peaceably as possible. And the answer is to go forward and arrest those who are going, who have been doing what you're talking about, who've been signing the pen and doing it. You go and you arrest them, you try them, you put them before a court and you try them. And if the court decides that what they've done deserves the death penalty, then you hang them or whatever it is you're going to do. But you bring them before a court. And if you can't get to them because they're protected by people with guns, then you have to fight the people with guns so that you can get to them and arrest them. If there's going to be people with guns to defend them, then you have people with guns to fight the people with guns, so that when that fighting is done and you get to the person, you arrest them.
Okay.
We don't assassinate. We don't do vigilantism. We don't summarily execute people because of their beliefs or what they said or what we think we said about. We go and arrest them and bring them before justice. If they have people who are there who are armed to protect them, and we have what we feel is a moral right to fight these people, then the people with arms fight the people with arms, so that the people can come and arrest and bring those who we feel are in the wrong. We bring them to justice.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. In the main, I agree. But what if the justice system, what if that apparatus simply doesn't work? What if it just no longer serves the people?
That's what I'm saying. We're referring to the Revolutionary War of the United States, even referring to the Civil War of the United States. What the South was trying to do, which was basically leave us alone, or let's separate and have our own state. But if it's an insurrection or a revolution, the idea is that this system, this current governmental system, is unjust. We want to establish a new. So then you start to establish that new. You establish the people who are going to what we're going to do, what we're going to believe, what we're going to fight for. It's not just a rabble of people fighting. It's we want to establish this new rule of law. This is what we're going to establish. Who wants to fight for this? Let's form our military out of a militia. Let's form the resistance out of this. Based on this constitutional change, based on we have officers, we have political people. We are trying to establish the new government that's going to come in and replace this old corrupt government. But it has to be done in that type of an organization. It has to be done in that. It cannot just be a rabble of people tearing cities apart and fighting. It cannot be anybody who's operating, who's killing, who's destroying things without a chain of command is just a rabble. It's just a riot. You establish a chain of command. You establish these are our leaders, these are our generals, here's our chain of command, here's our soldiers, here's what governments we're going to be fighting for. And this is the organization that we're going to be trying to bring. And our forces, our armed forces, are going to challenge your armed forces, so that if we can defeat your armed forces, our government can come in and strike down the wrong government. But if it's just people acting in a riot, that's not moral either. It has to come from some sort of organization. It has to come from some sort of chain of command to be a system fighting.
We could create a chain of command, no problem. Chain of commands exist in gangs, but I don't think we should be endorsing what gangs do, gang violence.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm talking about. Gang violence is just fighting against other gangs. Gang violence is trying. Again, I'm saying you have a constitution.
You're putting all kinds of rules on,
which is what the revolution was.
Well,
we had political leaders, we had generals, we had armies, we had ranks.
War laws are silent, but
But I'm saying it wasn't a rabble of people. It was an attempt at a new.
Well, according to the
government.
British, it was. According to the British, it certainly was. We were,
but it wasn't.
We were,
but
mobs.
it wasn't.
The Boston Massacre was a mob. So you would.
Yes, the Boston Massacre was a mob.
You side with the Redcoats in the Boston Massacre.
The Boston Massacre was a mob, and those people went on trial, and they were convicted on trial.
You need to move to England,
and they were convicted in trial. They were arrested. They were arrested and put on trial.
Yeah,
because our own country said no, that's not how we're going to do it.
All All right. So,
The country that was trying to form said that's not how we're going to do it.
but we got to come back to reality.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's a mess. And
It
is
is a mess.
nobody going to follow all of these rules? And I have here this quote from Robespierre that I posted. I posted on my social, but I want to kind of share it because it's something to consider. I like Robespierre, but I also hate him. He was a complicated character, and I think he got pretty carried away, and he got his just desserts. But at the same time, he had some statements that I feel are thought-provoking. So here's his. He says, peoples do not judge in the same way as courts of law. They do not hand down sentences. They throw thunderbolts. It's a reference to Zeus. They do not condemn kings. They drop them back into the void. And here's the key line. And this justice is worth just as much as that of the courts. Now, there's no due process here.
No, then it's not. Then it's not the same. Without due process, then it is not the same.
But it's not. You're right. It's not the same. But the question is,
it's not as just
as much as the courts.
No, not at all. Okay, because it does not have due process.
What can the people do when the system completely fails them? When the courts and the system are hostile to them?
I just described it.
So they have to formally insurrect.
Yes.
Wow.
Formally.
Well, okay.
That's how the United States began. That's what the colonists did.
My problem is
they did not act as terrorists.
I think the opposition could form, and they could establish a chain of command, and they could have a manifesto, and they could have people who are pledged to that opposition. They could have a flag and a name and everything. And Scott, I worry that you would still say that they're nothing more than a rabble. That, I just don't know how people in mass who are disenfranchised by the justice system,
there has to be enough of them.
How many? 10, 100, 1,000, a million? 51%?
The majority.
A majority, yeah. 51%. So once we have 51%, you're totally cool with, we can do communism if that's what 51% choose.
If you can get 51% of the people to take action, that's a lot. That is a huge hurdle. But
because we don't even like presidents with 51%.
I know, but I'm saying if you can get that many people, that's why it's so difficult. If you can get that many people to say this is how we're going to change, then maybe the change is needed.
Yeah,
and maybe the insurrection is what's needed. But you look at what happened on
never would have happened under your 51% rule. There would have never been an American Revolution. Only about a third of the colonists were in favor of independence. So under your rule, the United States would never form. Buddy, you are a loyalist. You're a Tory.
It's kind of funny because maybe 30. You're saying 30%, but
about a third roughly is the estimate.
Right. But again, you're completely measuring it against. I'm measuring it to what's happening now, to where everybody can actually know what's happening. Back then, maybe a third of the country, maybe a third of the people didn't actually even know what was happening. The fighting wasn't happening around them. Maybe they heard a little bit about it or whatever, but the war wasn't around them, and they didn't have all the information that we have right now. They didn't have it.
I don't know, Scott.
Doesn't affect me.
I feel like you're moving the goalposts all over the place. And what's going to happen then is the people are just going to ignore this anyway. They're going to ignore it anyway. They're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to cast thunderbolts. They're going to drop kings back into the void.
Because here's the thing.
Them to a certain part, you're going to get what we got last week. You're going to get more of it. You're going to get worse.
But to continue to answer the question that you asked, what the difference is with the 50%, it was 30% engaged. There was a whole group who was like, I agree with you, but I'm not going to go fight for it. But if you
there's about a third who agreed with it.
Yeah,
the number of people who are actually engaged is very small. That, in fact, that's that 3% number. If you've ever seen the 13-star flag with the Roman numeral 3 in it. Because that's the percentage of people who are literally engaged in revolutionary work. 3%. Now, I don't know how accurate that stat is,
Right.
but it's in that
But if it's
ballpark.
representative of the majority, if it's we
It's
all want
representative of a
change.
third of the people. The other third, there were just as many loyalists when the revolution started as there were revolutionaries.
So that
there
would
were
be 50%.
patriots, you know, so,
So that would
well,
be 50%.
no, there was another third in there that
you
was
just said there was
indifferent.
just as many. Right. But again, that third is indifferent in that I'll go with, you still represent.
They'll go with whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what they did. But yeah, I don't know, Scott. At the end of the day, we live in a world where might makes right. Whether we like it or not, the law of the jungle still exists. We can create these institutions, which I'm glad we create them. Nobody should want to live under the law of the jungle. But at the end of the day, if you oppress the people to the point they feel they cannot get justice to the courts, they cannot get representation to the government, and there is no other remedy for them, they are not going to care about rules or laws or anything or percentages, none of that.
Yeah.
They're simply going to rise up and they're going to do things like we saw
Yes.
in New York.
And they will still be wrong.
Elsewhere. And they may still be wrong until they win.
Will still be
until
wrong.
If you win, you need not explain, right? So there you have it. If you
You
win,
have to, you cannot take it upon yourself. You must form a new government.
Do people have the right to self-defense? I don't even want to open up that can, but do people have a right to self-defense as individuals or collectively?
Yes, you have a right to self-defense to what's happening to you immediately.
Right?
Yes.
So at what point, if people can't get justice through the system, at what point can they rise up and seek justice?
Then you create a new system.
How?
And that becomes
they're locked out. They're not empowered to do that. How do I go to a bunch of diabetic persons, a bunch of sick and elderly persons, people with chronic illnesses, and tell them that they have to form a new system? Go form your own insurance company. What? How are they going to do that? How are the poor going to do these things?
The very same way that the current insurance system started. Everybody started somewhere. You had the studio, you had the movie studios controlling everything, and then the artists said, "You know what? We're going to start our own movie studio, United Artists," and then they created their own movie studio.
But it takes some capital, it takes some money.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
and it takes.
There's going to be some people who can. There are going to be some people who can do that. You can raise capital. Good thing it's capitalism, because you can raise capital to do that. You can start your own company. It is hard. It's not simple. It's not easy, but it is possible. But that's outside of the realm of what we're talking with insurrection. That's out. Those are two separate things.
Okay.
It'd be great if you could solve it this way, which a lot of places have. There are healthcare companies that are in existence. I haven't joined one yet. I've been offered to them to where it's like, we are a healthcare system of individuals. So where you get enough of us together, then we have the buying power of other healthcare systems that runs a different way.
Other countries have socialized healthcare. Other countries, in fact, every other country on the planet has it. We pay more for healthcare here, but we're like in the 40s or 50s in terms of healthcare outcomes, ranked worldwide.
But again, that's a different discussion. We're talking about murder and healthcare. That's different.
When your healthcare system, through its action or its inaction, brings about your suffering and an early demise.
Here it comes.
We call that beep, whatever Scott wants to call it, bleep it out.
Not murder.
Puppies and kittens, whatever. Okay, not murder.
Let's fight against it. Let's fight against it the right way.
But how do you fight against it when you're stymied at every turn?
You keep fighting.
Okay, I can only talk to a brick wall for so long, and I don't.
I know, right?
That's
how I feel.
I don't mean you, but I feel like you're telling people, go talk to that brick wall and convince it. Keep talking to the wall, and at some point, someone's going to break out. Someone's going to break out the sledgehammer.
Go build your own wall. That's the whole thing. That's the answer. The answer is go build your own wall. And if that means go build your own company or go build your own country, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Build your own wall. If enough people agree with it, and if enough people are on your side, and if enough people say, this is what represents me, then that will take over.
Yeah,
that's human nature. It will take over. Build your own wall.
Well, there's a lot of people who'd like to build their own country, both right and left, and
Yep.
that's not an option.
It's been done. It's been done on this. It's been done here before, and that's how it was done.
I don't know. Well, anyway.
All right. We got a little long. This has been United Opposition, Healthcare, and Murder. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week. Who knows what we're going to talk about? It's always something new, something different. But the important thing is that we're talking. That's the important thing, because if we can all get together, we can avoid these things if we can all get together and talk. This is the hope of our nation. This is the hope of our future, is doing what Marshall and I are doing right here. So we hope we bring you that hope. God bless you guys. Until next week.